Litany. Adonai Elohai La'olam Odeka Amen. I will extol you, O Lord, for you have drawn me up. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to you forever. Amen. So we're taking some time this August to look at the life and times of Jacob, one of the great patriarchs of Israel, one of the great fathers of Judaism. And so we started with looking at Jacob and his birth with his his twin brother Esau, and how they had a bit of a conflict and they didn't always get along all that well. We talked last week about Jacob running away from his brother's wrath after he had tricked Esau not only out of the birthright, the right of the oldest child, but also out of Esau's blessing from his father, Isaac. So Jacob ran away and he had this amazing dream of a staircase and the connection to heaven and earth. And today we come to Jacob. He's finished his travels and he's arrived at his uncle's house. Laban is indeed Rebekah, Jacob's mother's brother. And so he comes, Jacob, to his uncle's house and he stays for a while. And after being at Laban's house for a while, Laban says to Jacob, while you're here, you might as well do some work. And while you're working, I should probably pay you because that's a good thing to do. What do you want? So Jacob says, I got an idea. How about I will work for you for 7 years in return for the hand of Rachel, your youngest daughter, in marriage. This is a really good deal for Laban. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of this. Laban is getting basically slave labor for 7 years and marrying off his youngest daughter at the same time. And so Laban can't say no to this. So he's like, sure, hey, why not? So Jacob signs up to be his mother's brother's servant, his uncle's servant, for 7 years in order, that's right, to marry his cousin. Just want to make sure we're being completely clear here. Jacob is marrying his first cousin. So he works for the 7 years, comes back to his uncle and says, okay, Laban, I have worked for you for 7 years. Give me my wife. So Laban does what every good and dutiful father does. He throws a big party because this is how things are done. And so throws the big party. And in ancient times, the wedding party was really a festivity. It was a big shebang. And there was lots of fun and all sorts of alcohol streaming around. And this becomes relevant because what happens at the end of the evening is that Laban brings Jacob his bride, and they do the wedding night activities that one might suspect. And in the morning, Jacob wakes up expecting Rachel to be in bed with them and discovers indeed it's not Rachel, it's her sister Leah. There's an entire tradition in Judaism now stemming from this situation where the night before the wedding, the groom is the one who puts the veil on the bride, just to make sure everybody's marrying the person he thinks he's supposed to be marrying. So Jacob goes to his uncle Laban and says, hey, Laban, I thought I was working 7 years for Rachel, not Leah. What happened? And Laban has what I think is perhaps the best excuse on the planet. I'm sorry, I couldn't give you Rachel because her sister is not married yet. Really? Really? So Jacob works out a deal that he will live out the honeymoon week, the customary week with Leah, and then will be able to marry the original cousin he wanted to marry, as long as he works another 7 years for his uncle. And so this is what happens. He works off his time, and for 14 years now, Jacob has worked for Laban, and in order to get two delightful brides, one of whom he loves, and the other one happens to be her sister. I have to say that this story runs up against so many of our modern sensibilities, right? First of all, there's the whole sister wives thing, which is not all that common in our context, let alone the fact that they are actually sisters. There's actually a law later on in the Old Testament that says you can't marry a sister, your wife's sister, as long as your wife is still living. So as long as she's died, then that's cool, but can't set your two sisters up as sister wives at the same time. I think this is probably a lesson that we learn from Jacob and Rachel and Leah, because it doesn't necessarily go all that well. I've heard a lot of stories about how this is really the great karma coming back to bite Jacob, because what he really did is he sniped his brother a lot of different ways, and he tricked his brother out of a lot of different things, and so this trickster is getting tricked in and of himself, and this is the payback for the way that he has treated his own brother. I actually have a hard time with that, Because in the midst of all of this, if we're thinking about Jacob being given Leah, the wrong sister in marriage, as the cosmic result of Jacob not being kind to his own brother, it completely leaves out the value of Jacob's wives, right? If we say that Laban is simply giving Jacob what Jacob has due, we are completely devaluing the fact that what Laban has done is set his daughters up, his own daughters up, as rival wives, and sitting them in a situation where one of them is loved and the other one knows that she's not. And how powerful that is. We talk a lot right now about what is due and what is earned and what is the value and how it is that we determine value. You know, we have talk a lot in our society about what is due and reparations and how we should treat one another and how we shouldn't treat one another. And often when we talk about that, it's how we have behaved towards one another in our past that determines how we should be treated in the future. If I'm kind to another person, then they should be kind back to me. Often this comes in the context of police brutality. When we talked about the killing of George Floyd, we talked about the past that he had, the good past and the bad past. We didn't talk about the fact that just because he had been accused of something, perhaps it wasn't worth taking his life. That simply being accused of a crime is not an automatic death penalty. And so I think when we come to this story of Jacob and Rachel and Leah, what we need to remember is that we are all children of God. That Jacob has been misbehaved in his past, but his misbehavior does not merit the treatment that he gets from his uncle. That it doesn't matter how Jacob has behaved, the treatment from his uncle affects negatively other people. That Rachel and Leah live a life that is hard and difficult because they are being used as pawns in the midst of a cosmic game. In life, we need to reach out and show that love more than karma. We need to reach out and say to one another, you are a child of God, and I will see you as such. You are a child of God, and you deserve my respect. You're a child of God, and you deserve to be treated kindly all the time, whether I'm happy with you, whether I'm not happy with you. I watch a lot of historical drama in my lifetime. It's a thing that I get into, and one of the things that always strikes me when I'm watching certain shows is when people will stand up for themselves, particularly when the female characters will stand up for themselves in a historical drama. I think particularly of Call the Midwife, which is about British midwives in the East End of London in the 50s and 60s. And often these women who travel all over the East End to help birth the next generation will find themselves in situations where they're being mistreated. And the first thing that they will say is, I am a midwife and I deserve your respect because of it. And it strikes me because the society that they were raised in, the society that they lived in, would not have respected them outside of their employment. Respecting them simply because they were children of God is not something that would have happened, but they were a midwife, and they deserved respect because of that status. What we need to get better at for ourselves and for others is saying, I'm a child of God and I deserve your respect. I deserve your kindness, I deserve your care, and I deserve to be shown the love of God. So this day, I invite you, take a step back, think about the ways that we live as if karma is a thing that we should follow. I'm going to take your candy because you took mine. That happens at my house. And instead say, no, I am a child of God. I will treat you as a child of God, and together we will continue to reach out and show that love to make the world a better place, because we know that it doesn't matter our past actions or our future actions, simply that we are God's children, that we deserve love and respect. Amen.